Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, there is a lot to talk about. We had a huge night in the NBA that had two teams eliminated, two teams move on in thrilling fashion in one of them. We had a Game 7 set up in hockey. We are going to go over round 2 of the NBA as they start tomorrow. So we're going to break down as much as possible in that round. We don't know all the series, but we'll speculate as much as we can to give you the most accurate predictions. And then we are also going to talk a little bit about Darvin Ham being fired from the Los Angeles Lakers, the big breaking news of the day, and what that means for the future of LeBron with the team, with the Lakers themselves, how this is going to affect them, if there was the right move at all, and more. So stick around for that. We're going to start off our show breaking down the Knicks win in Philly. A huge win for the Knicks moving on to the second round. We'll do that in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up at the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate anything you do give. Appreciate everybody watching. We appreciate all the comments that you leave. Appreciate you taking time out of your day. But like I was saying, we have a lot to talk about today. So we're just going to start off with the Knicks. The New York Knicks beat the Philadelphia 76ers by 3 points last night in Philadelphia to win the series in 6 games. Joel Embiid had an incredible game. Buddy Hield had an incredible game. And Jalen Brunson had an incredible game. Jalen Brunson outdueled everybody on the Sixers. Tyrese Maxey probably, and I don't want to say he's the reason they lost because he made some clutch shots, but only scoring 7 points on an elimination game, coming off a game where you carried the team past the Knicks, and it being that close, it definitely is tough, but the Knicks got a lot of help from a lot of their guys. They played a really good game defensively, offensively. Again, Jalen Brunson is insane. His tough shot making is something that's really impressive to watch. If you were watching these games, he was driving with no fear at guys that were a foot taller than him, and it didn't work out every time. You know, you saw at the end of Game 5 against Joel Embiid in regulation, he got blocked. At the end of overtime, he got blocked. So it doesn't work every time, but he's making these tough fadeaway shots. He's getting past Joel Embiid and these other big guys, and he's making a lot happen on the offensive end. He was incredible in this series MVP as the Knicks move on to face the Pacers in the second round, as the Pacers also won yesterday. But going back to the Sixers game, I was really impressed with the Knicks. You know, the Sixers come in and they make sure that the Knicks fans can't buy out the arena like they did in Game 4 of that series. And they finally use Buddy Hield, which they traded for him at the deadline so he could do what he did last night, so he could make 7 threes and keep them in the game. That's the kind of player that Buddy Hield is. He was a healthy scratch for a bunch of games in this series, and I don't agree with that decision necessarily. I think that was a mistake. I know he wasn't, this kind of shooter every single night, but you don't know that if you're not even giving him a shot to play. That was one of my qualms with the way the 76ers handled this series. I think the spacing that he provides on the floor is really important. You have a guy like Nick Batum out there with him. You can get Joel Embiid on the inside one-on-one, and he can dominate like he did last night. They're not going to be able to come in and give double teams to Joel Embiid because they have to go and protect the perimeter against Tyrese Maxey, against Nick Batum, against Buddy Hield, against these guys that can spread the floor and make these three-point shots with efficiency. It's something that they didn't really do that much in this series, and it's a little shocking to me because of what they did at the deadline. And I don't want to take the attention away from the Knicks because the Knicks did a great job in this series defending against Joel Embiid. Hartenstein, their center, he had a really great series. It's not numbers that are going to jump out to you at the box score. It's not necessarily bad numbers either, but what he's been able to do on the inside against a physical prowess like Joel Embiid, being able to stand his ground, hold his own against the 76ers, he was a major reason why the Knicks were able to win this series. His physicality down there is really, really important to the Knicks, and they are going to move on and play the Pacers, who also won last night. They won by a landslide. Dame was back, and it just wasn't enough. The Pacers got into a groove. Tyrese Halliburton was making his shots, and it was kind of the opposite of last game. In the fourth quarter, they really pulled ahead. The Bucks really struggled in that fourth quarter, especially at the beginning of it. But the Pacers move on, and they are going to be playing the Knicks in the second round. We'll break down the second round matchup in segment 2 here in just a second. But I was really impressed by this Knicks team. I had discounted them heading into this series. I thought that without Julius Randle, they weren't going to be able to out-physical the 76ers and Joel Embiid down low, and that just is not what happened. The 76ers came in and they were just out-efforted, outboarded, outplayed, and at the end of the day, this was a really even series. This isn't your typical 2-7 series where, you have a team that's just frankly so much better than the rest of them. That's just frankly better than the 7 seed. It's not one of those matchups. This was a matchup of two really good teams, two teams that are conference championship worthy level teams, and the Knicks were hurt going into it. And the Knicks came out, and they came out with a passion. They came out with a fire. They knew that if they won this series, it was going to be it was going to be an easier matchup in round 2 regardless. Regardless of who they were playing, they were going to go up against either the Bucks or the Pacers, who don't have good defenses. To put it simply, they don't. The Knicks have an elite defense. I was really impressed by them. Even in Game 5, when they kind of blew it down the stretch, that was more because Tyrese Maxey was making incredible plays making tough shots, incredible plays down the stretch, rather than the Knicks defense. The Knicks defense actually kept them ahead. OG Anunoby had had a couple tip passes and steals that led to extending the lead to even force it to go to overtime. The Sixers would have won that game without OG Anunoby and the pressure that the Knicks defense was able to put on the 76ers down the stretch in Game 5. They would have won it in regulation. But, that's really what impressed me about this series from the Knicks. They come in injured, and they play with so much heart. Josh Hart has a great series. He bounces back, makes some clutch free throws after missing a free throw in Game 5. He bounces back and makes the free throws that really puts them away. Tyrese Maxey didn't have a good game. I know I already touched on that, but that really stings in an elimination game, and it's not against him. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, he's the reason that they lost. Tyrese Maxey is the reason why they lost. No, I'm not going to sit here and say that. That's just frankly incorrect. He was contributing at other levels of the game. His shot wasn't falling like it was, but you had guys like Buddy Hield come and pick up the slack. You had guys like Joel Embiid put up 35 points. It was a team effort, and I think if Maxey just had one bounce go his way, the Sixers could have extended this series to 7 games. But that's not how the ball went. The Knicks win the series. It was a hard-fought series. I was saying how close of a series it was. You look at the plus-minus of these teams, they were separated by 1 point over 6 games. That is incredibly close. That's incredibly hard-fought. There's not that many series that can be that close on the stat sheet and on the eye test. So it really was a really good series by both of these teams. Both of these teams should feel... this is heartbreaking for the Sixers. You saw it at the end of the game on Joel Embiid's face, and it brings up the question, is he out of Philadelphia? We know that earlier in the season, before the season started, he was saying something along the lines of, "Hey, if we don't start to win soon or show that we're committed to winning, I don't want to sign another contract." And I think he's still got another year left on his deal, but does a loss like this to the Knicks spell the end for the 70s for Joel Embiid in Philly? These are the questions that Philly's going to have to answer over the offseason. These are the questions that, that this first round loss has really thrust upon them. Like I said, it's not necessarily it's not a bad loss. It's different than if they had lost to, say, the Jimmy Butler-less Miami Heat in a 7-game series. That would have been a tough one to swallow. Or if they had lost to the Magic, or if they had lost to the Cavs, or in the first round, any of those teams, it would have stung a little more, I think. But this one is just tough to swallow because the Sixers played really good basketball, and the Knicks kind of just the Knicks also played really good basketball. This was a fun, tight, contested series in all 6 of those games. They're especially down the stretch, game 3 to 6 were all extremely close and hard fought. Joel Embiid wasn't 100% healthy, and you could tell it definitely affected how he played sometimes. He still played really good basketball, and it sucks if you're a Sixers fan to see your team go out like this, but they'll be back next year. They'll be fine. They need to figure out what they're going to do as far as bringing back some of their stars. Tyrese Maxey's deal, he's due for money. Joel Embiid's deal is almost up, so their window is rapidly closing, and they need to get something going because the process right now is a failure. They haven't made it out of the second round, and it's not necessarily the vision that they had, when the process started, when they started winning games again, and they were really good. They got it down to literally the last second against Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors back in, 2018, 2019 or something like that. They've had their opportunities. They just haven't been able to cash in on it, whether that be because of injuries or bad bounce luck or just getting outmatched by another team. It's tough. It is. But the 76ers and the Knicks move on. A very hard-fought series, a battle, a war of a series, you might call it. Knicks take it in 6. Pacers also take it in 6 over the Bucks. The Bucks, who didn't have Giannis all series, which is something I was surprised about. I thought Giannis would show up for at least an elimination game, and I don't know how bad his injury is. I'm never one to say, hey, come back early from injury. You make it. This is an important one for you. But still, it's kind of disappointing as a basketball fan to not watch one of the best play in the playoffs. But anyway, in this segment coming up, we're going to break down the second round of the NBA playoffs. We're going to go matchup by matchup, break down how many games it's going to take for a winner and who is going to win each series. The series we don't know yet. There are 2 series we don't know, that being the 1 seed series. Either the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to take on the Clippers or the Mavs, and the Celtics are going to take on the Cavs or the Magic. So we'll just go off whoever is currently winning in the series, but I'll give you predictions for if either team makes it. But anyway, stick around. Second round predictions coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. Out in your shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we broke down the two series-ending Game 6s that took place last night in the NBA between the Pacers and the Bucks, the Pacers taking that series, and the Knicks and the 76ers with the Knicks taking that series. Those two teams will match up in round 2, and we will be breaking down every single round 2 matchup in this segment right here. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you are right now, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up at the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have anything that you have a burning question you want to ask, you have anything that you want me to respond to, anything in the world of sports that you think I need to touch on, leave a donation, leave a comment. I will respond to those as soon as I possibly can. We appreciate anything that you do give. We appreciate you spending your time on a beautiful Friday out here, at least in Virginia, spending time with me. But anyway, like I said, in this segment right here, we are going to break down the second round of the NBA playoffs. We don't know all of these matchups, and I kind of talked about this at the end of the first segment, but for the people that weren't here then, what I'm going to do for the two playoff matchups that we don't know yet, that being the Thunder taking on either the Clippers or the Mavericks, and the Celtics taking on either the Cavs or the Magic. Excuse me. I'm going to, for this exercise, assume that the team that is currently winning, that's being Dallas and Cleveland, are the teams that are going to move on. 80% of the time that happens, that's how I'm going to treat this. If we have time at the end, I will do the flip-flop of it. But I want to focus more on the 2-seed series because we know those are matched up. The first game of the second round is on Saturday between the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. So we will break that one down here. These two games could end. We could know the series matchups today. But we'll just start off with the Timberwolves and Nuggets because that's the game that is happening tomorrow. That's the first second round game, and that is probably, looking on paper, actually, you know what, definitely, that is the best second round matchup. You look at the 1 seeds versus whoever they're going to face. The Celtics are going to roll. The Thunder, those teams could give them a little bit of trouble. The Knicks, I think, can handle the Pacers. But this Nuggets-Timberwolves series has the most amount of intrigue. You talk about two teams that are at the top of their conference. They were separated by less than a game for most of the season as far as standings go. They were battling out for that number 1 seed. Neither of them won it. They were battling with the Thunder. These top 3 seeds in the West have battled all season long. The Timberwolves' defense has been insane. They just are coming off of a sweep of the Phoenix Suns and their high-powered offense filled with stars, top to bottom in the lineup. Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, all of them right there. And they got swept by the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards is having himself a playoff run right now, and it's very impressive to watch. But at the same time, you have the Denver Nuggets, the defending champions, after handling the Lakers, handling them. They lost a game. It was a gentleman's sweep, but they never really seemed like they were in any danger of losing. They had to win on a buzzer beater. They had to win on the last-second shot. They were close games, but they were just starting slow for a lot of the time. So it's interesting. It's an interesting dichotomy here. You have your defending champions taking on a young, hungry team in the Wolves who if you know anything about Minnesota sports, success is not something that tends to follow Minnesota sports around. Uh, Not just the Timberwolves, the Vikings and everything else that's up there as well. The Wild in hockey. There's there's plenty of examples of heartbreaking losses on these teams. The Timberwolves won their first series in like 20 years. This is the first series they won since Kevin Garnett was on the Timberwolves back in the early aughts. So it's very impressive how far this team has come. It's going to be a battle. This series, I believe, is going to go 7, and it really is going to depend on how hard the Nuggets try in every single game. I feel like sometimes the Nuggets get too comfortable. At least when I was watching that Lakers series, they didn't seem there were stretches there, especially at the beginning of games where they came out flat because it seemed to me that they were so confident they were going to win it, and for good reason. They match up really well against the Lakers, but the Timberwolves defense is something different. And Anthony Edwards, when he's playing like this, is super tough to stop. Jaden McDaniels on the outside, he's going to be able to shut down Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray, who was killing the Lakers in clutch time. He had 2 game-winning shots, a buzzer beater and a game-winning shot to send the Lakers packing with 3 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Jamal Murray was huge in the clutch for him, and Jaden McDaniels being out on the perimeter guarding him, it's going to make it a lot tougher. You have Rudy Gobert on the inside against Nikola Jokic, which Jokic is going to do his thing. I don't think there's anybody in the league that can stop him, not even the defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert, or presumed defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert. But the Timberwolves are not a team you can take lightly. Regardless of how good their defense is, their offense is nothing to scoff at either, especially when Anthony Edwards is cooking like he has been. Anthony Edwards, when he's on, is a top 10 player in the NBA. He plays with such energy and passion. There's a reason that he's getting Michael Jordan comparisons. There's a reason that he is vaulting up leaderboards of people's favorite players, of top players in the league today, and he's an exciting young player to watch. His athleticism, his passion for the game, you can tell it through the screen. It's not often that you can see someone's passion like that for the game through the screen the way that you can see it in Anthony Edwards. And it's really good for the future of the NBA. But it also makes him a dangerous player in the playoffs because he's playing with everything he's got the whole time. And this series, like I said, is going to be a lot of fun. I think the series is going 7. It's tough to pick against the Nuggets. It really is. You have Jamal Murray. You have Nikola Jokic. You have shooters on the outside. You have guys that can spread the floor. It's not the same Nuggets team as last year. They lost a little bit. It's not the same dominance that they were last year, but it's still a dominant team. This Nuggets team is nothing to scoff at. I have the Nuggets taking this in 7. But like I said earlier, if the Nuggets come out flat against the Timberwolves the way that they were coming out flat against the Lakers, the Timberwolves are going to eat them up. The Nuggets need to come out and they need to play like they did in the second half of the games against the Lakers for the whole game. They can't fall too far behind against a defense like the Timberwolves, who are one of the best defenses in the entire league. It's an elite defense with a lot of elite defensive players. So it's going to be tough. It is. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's an easy Nuggets victory or it's an easy Timberwolves victory. I have the Nuggets in 7 because of Nikola Jokic. He's the best player on the court, and I think the Nuggets simply having the best player on the court is what's going to be able to push them ahead of the Timberwolves. But it's going to be a really fun matchup, and that is by far, in my opinion, the best second-round matchup that we have. The other second-round matchup that we know is the Pacers taking on the Knicks. I think the Knicks are going to be able to take this. They're a little battered and bruised after a tough, hard-fought series against the 76ers, but I think they're better for it. The Pacers coming off it wasn't really a hard-fought series. It was just a series that they kind of outshot them, and that was the series it was always going to be. Those two teams aren't known for defense, the Pacers and the Bucks. The Pacers come out of that series, they haven't really been tested all that much. The one time that they really were tested in Game 5, I talked about it yesterday. They look dejected. Like, I haven't seen an NBA team look dejected like that in the playoffs in a long time. And they were able to bounce back. Kudos to them. That's not easy to do. And they were able to do it in a statement kind of fashion against the Bucks in Game 6 with Damian Lillard back in the lineup. They were able to just shut them down and win by 30. You know, that's not an easy thing to do. I commend them for being able to do that. But now you're running into the Knicks. The Knicks, a team that have faced a lot of adversity. Even to get here, you know, you lose Julius Randle, your big man. You'd have to face a tough series against Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and the 76ers in the first round. And now you get the Pacers. And this can go one of two ways. The Knicks can let their foot off the gas a little bit because they're not matching the intensity that the Sixers were playing with anymore, and that will hurt them. Or they can continue playing with intensity and they can kick the Pacers out of the gym. The Pacers are going to lose this series, I think, regardless. They're not a team that's good enough to beat this Knicks team, especially with the Knicks defense and their active hands and their ability to go on these hot streaks just out of nowhere. The Knicks are a very, very good basketball team. And I'm taking them to win this series in 5 games. Now, if they match the level of intensity that the Pacers are playing with, I think this can go 6. This is a 5 or 6 game series to me. I think the Knicks are going to take it either way. But the Pacers have the offense to stay stay shooting with any team. You know, as long as their shots are falling, they can beat any team in the league. But in a 7-game series, your shots aren't going to be falling like that every single night. We saw it. Celtics Heat is a really good example of that. I think it's going to be a similar series here. It's not going to be quite as much of a stark difference between the Knicks and the Pacers. It's much closer. But it's the same kind of vibes where the Pacers are going to need to hit like 40% from 3 to win a game, you know? And it's something that they've shown, they've proven they have the ability to do. But Jalen Brunson can outduel anybody on any team, and he proved that against the 76ers. So I have the Knicks taking this one in 5. Going up to the 2 series that we don't know yet. Like I explained in the beginning, I'm going off the team that's currently winning because 80% of the time they win that series. Starting off in the East, I don't think this one matters that much. The Celtics are going to sweep either of these teams. The Celtics are a much better team, even though they don't have Kristaps Porzingis. He should be back at least midway through this series, from what I've heard. The Cavs and the Magic have not moved me at all. In fact, they've moved me off of them from the games that I've watched. The Celtics should destroy them, and that's really as simple as it gets. The Celtics should kill them. Now, I think the Magic might be able to put a better fight against the Celtics just because the Cavs' offense disappears at least once every single game for a stretch that's way too long when you're playing a team like the Celtics. The Magic, on the other hand, when they're at home, they can, at least the way that they're playing at home right now, the intensity that they play with, they can play against anyone. They can make it tight. If the Magic are able to win this series against the Cavs, which off this assumption, we're going with no. The Cavs, I believe, will get swept. The Magic, I think, can make it a 5-game series. I don't see either of these teams making a run against the Celtics. And the final matchup of the second round is also interesting. You have a young Thunder team who dominated the Pelicans. Other than the first game, none of them were really that close. They sweep them. The Clippers and the Mavericks have been going at each other, and those two teams, while they struggle on the defensive end, both of them have the ability to score with the best of them, like the Magic. They both have the ability to score with both of those teams and keep them engaged. They'll be able to take a game or two. I'm taking the Thunder in 6 against either of those two teams. I think the Mavericks are going to be able to put a bigger fight because the Clippers are able to, or have shown the tendency for their stars to disappear at least for one game in the playoffs. You know, we saw it last game. Paul George and we saw Paul George disappear. We saw the rest of that team disappear along with him. We saw James Harden disappear. But they're less consistent than the Mavericks. Luka is going to have his 30 points every night. Kyrie is going to have his 25 points every night. They're going to put up at least 60. They're going to put up like 60 points on you every single night. So they're going to be able to give the Thunder more of a fight. I still think the Thunder are going to take this, setting up a Thunder, Nuggets, Celtics, Knicks. So I know that's chalk, but really at the end of the day, this series, this season, especially in the East, it's all chalk. Celtics should take that conference pretty easily. The Thunder, Timberwolves, and Nuggets clearly are leagues above the rest of the conference, and unfortunately, one of those three teams has to lose here. So, I think the Timberwolves, unfortunately, are that one team out as we head into the conference finals, or as we head into the conference semifinals. Excuse me. The first game of that starts on Saturday. The rest of those games start later that week, Monday, Tuesday. So there's a lot more time between the rest of the series. But for now, let's enjoy that Timberwolves-Nuggets series. They're like a week ahead of some teams right now, which is kind of crazy, actually. But that should be a really fun series. Anyway, in our next segment coming up, we're going to finish off the NBA. We're going to talk a little bit about the Darvin Ham firing from the Lakers. So stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we broke down all the NBA action from last night, as well as breaking down the entirety of the second round of the NBA playoffs. In this segment here, we're going to talk about the big news coming out of the NBA today, as the Lakers officially fired Darvin Ham, their head coach. We'll talk about how that affects the Lakers' offseason, why they're making this move, if it's going to affect LeBron's decision, how it might affect LeBron's decision, and more coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message is going to pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate everything that you do give. If you have a burning question that you need me to get answered, leave a tip or donation at gsmcpodcast.net. If you have a less burning question, leave it in the comments. I take a look at all those. Thank you so much for spending a beautiful Friday afternoon with me. But like I was saying, we are going to get into Darvin Ham. The Lakers have officially fired head coach Darvin Ham after 2 seasons in which he led them to 2 playoff berths, both as 7 seeds, both play-in victories. He leads them to the conference finals, lost to the Nuggets both times. And it's a little unlucky. It's not all on him. When you run into a buzzsaw like Nikola Jokic, it's tough. But there's more than just that here. He wasn't making the greatest lineup decisions, some would say. There were times when his players, weren't always on the same page. LeBron James was frustrated with him, and this move more to me signals more than anything else. And there's good reasons for firing him. There's good reasons for not firing him. But more than anything else, the firing of Darvin Ham is the Lakers' plea to LeBron James to stay. LeBron James, it seems like from all the reports, he was not a fan of Darvin Ham. Especially near the end of this last season, he wasn't a fan of what was going on. So he has a player option this season. His son, potentially, Bronny James, might enter the NBA draft. And if he does that, he'll exercise his player option regardless. But if he doesn't, there's still rumors that might have been his last game as a Laker. There's still rumors that what he did, that last series was he's done with the Lakers regardless. His future is uncertain in LA. There's a lot of places, there's a lot of teams that would love to have LeBron James on their team. But it's a delicate situation because you don't want to give a 39-year-old that much power over your organization, even if it is LeBron James. You want to put yourself as an organization in a place to succeed even after the championship year is gone. And the Lakers went all in, right? They did. And we've seen this before. The Lakers have gone all in and it didn't work out. They won the one championship back in 2020. So you can call it a success, you can call it a failure, you can call it what you want. I think winning a championship in any championship window is a success in any sport. So the LeBron James Lakers saga, I'd call it a success, even though they did miss the playoffs twice, which is a blemish on the era. But you win a championship, it kind of heals and hides a lot of wounds, especially when they make a lot of runs like they did last season. Like, not a lot of people were expecting that kind of run out of them. LeBron James is LeBron James. He's very good at basketball. He can carry your team like that. But at the end of the day, it's just not enough. That team isn't good enough. They don't have the assets to really compete for a championship. And you don't want to continue to push more and more assets to the center of the table to just, at the end of the day, either keep your team the same or make your team a little worse even at some points. The big trade for Russell Westbrook, I think, is what ended up doing it at the time. I mean, they gave up a lot for him, Kyle Kuzma and a bunch of picks. Kyle Kuzma is a guy that they could really use right now, providing shooting off the bench. He's still a solid. He's still a really, really good player, NBA player in Washington right now. But there's rumors that Tyronn Lue is coming back. It could come back. He's currently the coach of the Clippers. So stealing your crosstown rivals head coach, a coach that coached LeBron James back in Cleveland when they won a championship against the Warriors. There's a relationship there, but if I remember correctly, the relationship ended not too nicely between Ty Lue and LeBron James. This was LeBron GM era. This is when LeBron was playing GM, and I think they butted heads a little bit. But if LeBron James asked for him back, there was a relationship there. He had success with him. Maybe that's what he wants. And this feels, what this coaching search feels like is, hey, LeBron, if we hire this guy, you going to come back? That's what it feels like the Lakers are saying. And, I don't think it's really that big of an upgrade, or really even, I feel like it's just kind of the same level between Darvin Ham and Tyronn Lue. I don't think there's anything that's really too much of a difference between those two guys as far as coaching goes. I don't think that's really going to make that much of a difference on your team. It might, but I'm not seeing anything, at least nothing that I'm seeing is going to change how the Lakers, if they go out and get Lue, how it's going to change their fortunes. This is, hey, LeBron, please come back. And it's not crazy to say that because it's LeBron James. You want him on your team as much as you can. Not only is he a great basketball player, but he brings in a lot of money. Not that the Lakers are struggling to bring in money right now, but or really ever. It's the Lakers. But it's something to keep an eye on with who they hire and how that's going to affect the offseason for LeBron. Because that's the Lakers' big concern. Come back for one more year, Bron. Let's run it back one more time. Bronny James might not even come to the league. And if he doesn't, then I expect him to come back regardless. Unless a team like the Warriors might come out and seduce LeBron James to play with Steph Curry. To join that team, and I think that's actually a real possibility. They've talked about at the All-Star break wanting to play with each other. There's been a lot of talk around that, so maybe they find a way to work something out and play with each other. That would be fun. It would also suck for the rest of the NBA. I think people would kind of despise LeBron James for doing something like that. But it doesn't really matter at this point. His legacy is cemented. It's not going to change if he goes and plays with Steph Curry for a season. But anyway, lots to consider here. Darvin Ham is out. We'll figure out who the Lakers hire, and I think this is just gonna be a please LeBron hire. So it's not necessarily gonna change the direction of the franchise. It's just gonna keep it stagnant, which they're a good team. They're not championship level team right now, but they're definitely playoff level team. They're better than a 7 seed. They're better than when they're seeded. They're probably like a 4 seed level team, a 5 seed level team, somewhere along those lines, at least in the West. So interesting stuff looking at here. In our fourth and final segment here, before we close our show, before we close our week, we are going to move on to the ice and break down some hockey. The first round is also ending over there. We have a bunch of matchups set. We have a Game 7 set. Of course, a Game 7 between the Bruins and the Maple Leafs. If you didn't see that coming, you don't watch hockey, but it happens all the time. It had to happen. We'll break that series down. We'll break down the rest of the action in the NHL coming up on our fourth and final segment here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've broken down a lot of NBA today. Darvin Ham, let go from the Lakers. Who is going to be their next head coach? How is that going to affect LeBron's offseason? We broke down the entirety of the second round in the second segment, and we talked about the 2 games that happened last night where the Knicks and Pacers eliminated the 76ers and Bucks respectively to move on to the second round and set up some interesting matchups. But like I said, in this fourth segment, we are going to break down the hockey action that's been going on the ice, that being the Bruins and Maple Leafs forcing a Game 7 for the 4th consecutive series, a series where if you just look at it, you know it's going to happen every time. It had to happen. They had to go to Game 7, and it's kind of playing out like it has in every series again with these two teams. You know, it's always a little different, it's always a little unique, but we get to Game 7 every single time with these two, and they hate each other. It's a fun series to watch. It's super physical, and they do not get along. But before we break down all of that hockey talk, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message is going to pop up at the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question that you need me to answer right now, go ahead and leave a donation. I will answer it as soon as I see it. Leave a comment as well. We appreciate anything that you do give, any interaction that you have, and we appreciate all of you for enjoying the show and sticking around. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our show today with hockey. The Maple Leafs force a Game 7 against the Boston Bruins. And if you have watched any hockey in the last decade, the last 15 years, that's just how it goes. The Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins have faced each other, it's seemingly every single year for the last 10 years. This is one of those super intense rivalries. These two teams have been really good for a really long time, but the Leafs never win. This is the fourth consecutive series between these two teams in which it goes to 7 games, which is kind of insane. That is not something that just happens every single time. 7 games is tough. It shows how close these two teams are, and yet the Leafs haven't beaten Boston in this decade. Since before 2000. It's been a really long time. And these two teams hate each other because of that. They've had so many legendary playoff moments. You think back to about 10 years ago, the Bruins come back from a 3-goal deficit with 5 minutes left to win in Game 7. Stuff like that happens all the time for the Bruins against the Maple Leafs. Heartbreaking losses after heartbreaking losses. And it's set up again. It's kind of comedic how this works every single time. Game 7, once again. Every single year, these two play. It goes to Game 7. And seemingly every single year, it could be different this year. The Leafs finally won a series last year. Every single year, it seems, Boston pulls some miracle out of a hat and wins these games. It's going to be tough. The Leafs forced Game 7 without Austin Matthews. That is something that's really, really impressive to me. This Boston team has started really slow in the last 2 games. They only had 1 shot on goal in Game 6 first period, and they only had 2 shots on goal in Game 5 in the first period. So that's not the kind of intensity that you can come out with and expect to win a playoff game against a good team. William Nylander comes out and scores 2 huge goals in a 2-1 victory over Boston last night to send this game to 7. Send this series to 7. Excuse me. But aside from that, William Nylander had been missing for a lot of this series, and he comes in a crucial moment, in a moment where they don't have their star player, their star goal scorer, Austin Matthews, and he comes up clutch and makes a bunch of big plays, winning this game for the Leafs, forcing it back to Boston for Game 7 in something that the universe just had to happen. I've been talking about this, but it feels like it has to happen. Around the rest of hockey, and I expect Boston to win this series just because that's how it goes every single time. Around the rest of hockey, we have two Game 6s happening tonight between Nashville and Vancouver, and the Stars and Vegas Golden Knights. So those two teams, the Stars are up 3-2. Vancouver is up 3-2. These two series have been really fun to watch. The Canucks Predators have been full of great defense. Not a lot of shots, but great defense taking place. Lots of blocked shots. Blocked shots are tough. You sit and you take a rubber puck coming at you 100 miles an hour, and you just have to take it. And these teams are doing a great job of getting their bodies in front of pucks and stopping it from getting to the net. The Stars and Golden Knights series is fast. It's electric. There's stuff going on at every single moment. There's big hits, so many of them. There's lots of goals. There's lots of great saves, great goaltending. It's got a little bit of everything that you want to see in maybe the 2 best teams in all of hockey. You have your defending champions against one of the deepest teams I have ever seen, at least in the last 10 years. It's very, very impressive to see how these two teams match up. we'll break down a little bit of the second round matchups that we do know, and we'll save the rest for later because I can't call any of these series like I can in basketball. I don't think. We really only have one matchup set, and that's the Rangers taking on Carolina. That's going to start soon. The Rangers swept the Capitals, and the Carolina Hurricanes, gentlemen, swept the New York Islanders. So these are the two best teams in the conference, I think. The Rangers won the President's Trophy. The Hurricanes are the best team in the East. So this should be a fun series. I'm taking Carolina in this one in 6. The Rangers are coming off a series that they utterly dominated. Same thing with Carolina. Both of these teams utterly dominated, but they didn't dominate in the same way. The Islanders, it felt like, had life in this series a little bit. The Rangers never gave Washington a sliver of hope. Their penalty kill was insane, and I don't think they're going to be able to keep that up against Carolina. They took way too many penalties in that series for me to feel comfortable picking them to win. If they can be more disciplined, they have a shot. But against Carolina and their power play unit, one of the better power play units in the league, it's going to be really tough to give up, 5 power plays a game. That's what they were giving to the Capitals, and the Capitals just could not convert on any of their opportunities. I think they were like 1 for 20 in that series in 4 games, and that's really bad for those who don't know. That's really bad. You're supposed to score more than that on the power play. But it should be a fun series. It really should be. I'm excited for round 2 of hockey. We're going to get a lot of really good matchups. Florida taking on Boston or Toronto should be really fun. Colorado taking on Dallas or Vegas. Oh, that's going to be a super high scoring series. We talk about offense. That's going to be offense. And Vancouver or Nashville taking on Edmonton. Again, offense. If Vancouver's goaltending can get healthy, that's really been their downfall right now. Demko got hurt. Casey DeSmith got hurt. They're on to their 3rd string. He's from Latvia. You've never heard of him. He's started 4 games in his career before this. But he's been... He didn't play a bad game either. But it's an interesting situation between these two teams. You have... and who really kind of mirror each other really well. Nashville's defense is stout, just like Vancouver, but Vancouver, I feel like, is just a more talented team. They just have a hurt goaltender right now. And if they go into a series with Edmonton with a hurt goaltender, it's not going to go well. Edmonton, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, everyone like that is going to sting. That is not going to work. But we have our first Game 7. In any of these playoffs, be that NBA or NHL. We have our first Game 7. Best 2 words in all of sports, Game 7. I'm very excited to see what happens there in that series. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Stay on top of the playoffs. Stay on top of all of the news. It's been a crazy news cycle this week in sports. But anyway, hope you all have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday. Same time, same place. You've been watching Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.